Today's story comes from a small forest town where something impossible began happening overnight. Symbols started appearing on the trees, strange, shifting marks that changed every single day. What began as curiosity soon turned into dread. This is the story of the forest that learned to write back. I grew up in Pine Hollow, a quiet place surrounded by thick woods and steep hills. The forest was our safe zone. Kids played there, hikers wandered the trails, and everyone trusted it like an old friend. But last autumn, the first symbol appeared. It was carved into the bark of a birch tree right at the trailhead, long spirals intertwined like veins. The carving looked fresh, the edges pale and moist, as if someone had made it minutes earlier. But no one had seen anything. People assumed it was some edgy teen with a knife. That theory lasted exactly one day, because the next morning the symbol had changed. Same tree, same spot, completely different carving. The spirals were gone. In their place was a sharp, geometric shape, like a crooked star with too many points. The town ranger, old Harris, was the first to comment. "Trees don't heal like that," he muttered, "and they sure don't rewrite themselves." He posted a notice warning people not to enter the forest after sunset. At first, people laughed it off. Pine Hollow survived on tourists, and spooky warnings didn't help business. But the laughter ended on the fourth day, when 3 more trees developed symbols, each one unique, each one changing daily just before dawn. No tracks, no witnesses, no explanation. Some locals claimed the symbols looked familiar, like fragments of old alphabets. I didn't believe that until I saw them myself. One morning, my friend Katie dragged me to the trail. "Just look," she said. The symbols were deeper now, almost burned into the bark, and arranged in a subtle arc, as if forming a sentence. I felt watched, like eyes hid behind every branch. Katie whispered, "It's like they're trying to say something." I wanted to joke, but I couldn't, because the longer I stared, the more the shapes felt deliberate, intentional, alive. We left quickly, and by afternoon, everyone in town was talking about the forest writing. That night, Pine Hollow held an emergency meeting. Harris insisted on closing the trails entirely. "Something's wrong with the woods," he said. "They're reacting, changing." When someone asked what they were reacting to, he simply said, "Us." His voice was trembling. Harris never trembled. A few thrill-seekers ignored the warnings and entered the forest after dark. They came back pale and shaking, refusing to talk. One of them, a high school senior named Ben, was taken to the clinic because he couldn't stop muttering, "It looked at me. It looked at me." But he never explained what it was. The next morning, the trees had new symbols, sharper, deeper, almost angry. They weren't spaced out anymore. They were clustered, crowding over each other like voices shouting. And worst of all, they pointed. All the symbols stretched in the same direction, toward the northern ridge, an isolated part of the forest no one visited. Harris organized a small group to investigate. Somehow, I ended up volunteering along with him, Katie, and 2 others. We entered just after sunrise. Every tree we passed had symbols carved so deeply the trunks bled sap. Some marks pulsed with a faint warmth, as if the wood itself was breathing. The deeper we went, the more wrong the forest felt. Normally, the woods were filled with birds and insects, but it was silent, too silent. Even the wind felt muted. We followed the pointing symbols until we reached a clearing none of us remembered existing. The earth was circularly cleared, as if something had erased everything that once stood there. In the center of the clearing stood a dead oak. It looked ancient, hollow, twisted, but something inside it shimmered faintly. As we approached, the symbols around us shifted, literally moved, gliding across the bark of nearby trees like shadows. I heard Katie gasp, "Are they reacting to us?"
Then the oak split open with a slow, groaning crack. Not falling, opening. Inside was a hollow chamber lined with thousands of tiny carvings. They pulsed like dim lights, patterns flickering in sequence. Harris whispered, "It's language. The damn thing is speaking."
The flickering symbols suddenly synced, forming a spiral pattern. For a moment I saw images, memories that were not mine. I saw the forest centuries ago, untouched, vibrant, alive. I saw people cutting it down, burning sections for farmland, and I felt a wave of sorrow so deep it nearly knocked me over.
The forest wasn't just alive. It was aware, and it had been watching us for generations. The symbols weren't warnings. They were pleas. Pleas to stop the destruction. Pleas to leave it alone. And now, since we hadn't listened, those pleas were turning into something else, something darker. The ground began to tremble. Roots broke the surface like skeletal hands. They wrapped around the clearing, circling us. The oak's hollow glow brightened, and for the first time I heard a sound. Low, vibrating, almost like a voice emerging from deep underground.
Katie grabbed my arm. "We need to go." Harris shook his head. "No, it wants us to understand." But the trembling intensified and the roots tightened. One snapped inches from my foot like a whip. That was enough convincing. We ran.
As we fled, the symbols on the trees warped violently, as if screaming. The forest shifted under our feet, the trails bending, trees closing in. It didn't want us to leave. For a moment, I thought we wouldn't. But at the last second, the trembling stopped, the symbols froze, and the forest let us go.
When we emerged, the entire town was gathered outside the trailhead, staring at the woods. Every single tree at the forest edge now bore the same symbol, a vertical line with an eye in the center, watching, warning, promising something. The town sealed off the forest completely, but at night we could still see faint glows between the trees, the symbols shifting like restless thoughts. The forest wasn't done. It was waiting, learning, preparing to speak again.
A week later, the symbols changed to something unmistakable, shapes that spelled out a date. And that date was tomorrow. No one knows what will happen when the forest decides to speak again. All we can do is wait and hope it isn't a final warning.
If you made it to the end, thanks for sticking with this chilling tale. What do you think the symbols were building up to? And what do you think will happen on the forest's chosen date? Let me know your theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more horror stories. Stay safe out there.